you, Reef. Ooh, it's being recorded. Okay. In that case, I shall try not to swear or spit. Okay, give me a moment. Right. So I managed to break my computer the other day. I dropped it. So anything could happen now because I'm on an iPad that I'm not used to presenting on. And I'm just at a hospital. I had to go in for some surgery, so I've only just really recovered from anesthesia. So it's all good, really. It also means because I'm doing it this way, I can't easily see what the next slide is to remind me as I go through this. So pretty much everything's just as much of a surprise for me as it is for you. This could be fun. Give me a moment, just trying to get set up. Okay. All right, my open source project. It's all about the code. Oh, wait, no, it's not. Okay, well, I'm Rachel Lawson. And as Ruth said, I live in the gorgeous seaside town of Kings Lynn in Norfolk in the UK. But I do tend to move around a bit. I'm a little bit obsessed with my motorbike and riding it to as many places as I can. So I've been down as far as Turkey. This picture was coming back through Bulgaria, a place called Ludza, which I absolutely say you should go. Bulgaria is a beautiful, lovely place. And 13 or 14 years ago, I discovered a thing called Drupal. And I got interested in it, and then I found myself getting more and more interested in it, going to events, and then eventually getting involved in mentoring other people, in getting involved in contribution, and so on. And then I found myself starting to get involved in more organizational things, and I noticed that I was really quite okay at bringing people together and really giving them a purpose and getting them started at doing things. This picture is when we got people together in DrupalCon in Vienna in 2017, maybe. God, that seems a long while away now. And we needed some community members to organize a next large European event. And these people here, I got them together and they organized Drupal Europe all by themselves, which was kind of incredible. So there's Paddy Zonia there and so on, and various people. And I took a job at a thing called the Drupal Association, which is a 503c3 non-profit in the US that helps the project. Its mission is basically to support the Drupal project. And it does that in terms of providing Drupal's home, drupal.org. We have developers that create that. It helps us run all the financial side of doing things, and it helps us have a place to raise some funds, put on events, the major events, things like DrupalCon, where you've got thousands of people, rather than the small local events, which in our project are entirely run by the community. They're run by the community. We help publicize them, I suppose might be the best way to describe it. We help them get together through things like the event organizers working group to discuss best practices, but that's what they do, and they do a really, really good job of it. But I say, sometimes when people think of a very large open source project that runs massive things like nasa.gov and london.gov.uk and I don't know, most of the world's top university websites and stuff like that, people just assume it's going to be this massive organization. And it's not. The Drupal Association is 15 people. And yeah, we do work very hard. But obviously we could do this on our own. There are thousands and thousands of brilliant people in our community who do things that either we couldn't do, we shouldn't do, because they need to be run by the community, or we just simply don't have the capacity to do. You know, we have a great, probably world-beating security team that we work closely with and make sure that we can do security releases, and so on. I know that we're working with them to bring out a great new security product that protects websites, even when there might be a problem with the core code. It kind of is magic as far as I'm concerned. Can you tell I've not done development for a while? And so on. So, but these are all volunteers. So that's my background. And when I started doing this, there were 10 things that I thought I knew, or people have said to me over the years, but actually they're not true. The reality is slightly different. So I wanted to run through them. You could disagree with these, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. But something I hear a lot is, especially in open source, is you don't need permission to go and do something. Yeah, just go do it. Which is fine. It's true. But people often want to hear that they have permission. So it's not enough just to say in a general blanket statement, hey, yeah, if you want to do something you think is a good idea, go do it. People sometimes actually want to hear that there is interest in something, that they have so-called leadership's kind of ear and want to know that, yes, go do it. So if you are waiting for somebody in your community to pick something up and run with it, tell them to go run with it. Be explicit about that. Absolutely important. It's probably the one biggest lesson of all of these, actually. Another thing that a lot of people seem to pick up on is they think an open source community is just made up of developers, just like me. Well, it's not. It takes so many roles in an open source community to produce software, because that's not enough. It takes many roles. You know, it takes project managers. I'm in need of one at the moment. It takes mentors, people to help others grow. It takes documenters. Without a description of how to do things, doesn't matter how much software you've got, nobody's going to use it. It takes organizers. It needs people who corral and enable others. Otherwise, you'll go nowhere. It needs marketers. You need people to work, even in agencies that might be seen as competitive, working together to produce things that they can use between them about the product. We have a wonderful pitch deck that is worked on and produced by competing agencies. It's a really beautiful thing to watch. And in our project, even bakers, I love this story. So when you install Drupal and you want to evaluate Drupal, you can choose when it's installing to install an example website to play around in, which you can then change it to your heart's content. And what happens is it installs a food website with lots of recipes in it for various different things, food articles and so on. But of course, you can't have a food website without food. So members of our community got together to actually cook the recipes people had come up with, take frankly amazing photographs that make me just hungry every time I'm trying to work on the code of this, to put that together. Yeah, so you need those people to go do those extra things that you don't necessarily assume your project does. Okay. We make assumptions about how we communicate. And I hear it, and I've seen it, and in fact, actually, it's still mentioned in places in Drupal.org around, we communicate in English. But of course, English means different things in different places. How one person interprets something written in English is different to another person. An example of that is I've worked in the past in one of our working groups called the Community Working Group, and we were having meetings quite when I was early on. I'm from the UK, as I said, and most of the other members of that working group were from the US. And we'd come across issues, and the leader that was running the meeting was saying, well, we'll table this issue. And then I started talking about it, and he's like, well, we've just said we'll table that issue. And I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it. It turns out in the US, when they say that they're tabling an issue, it means let's wait till next time, which is the exact opposite meaning in the UK. When we say we're going to table something, that means, right, let's talk about it now. So yes, lots of people around the world understand English, but they don't necessarily understand it in the same way as you. One of the things that we've done to make sure that when you're talking with others in the Drupal project is in our issue queues where we make changes to code, etc., and work on things. We allow people in their Drupal.org profile to define what is their primary language, the language they learned and use on a day-to-day basis. And whenever you post an issue or you post a comment in something, it places that primary language, and if you choose to, your location next to your name. Because what it means then is people can interpret what you say based upon your knowledge of or interpretation of the language that you're using, which makes a big difference. And it reduces, how should we say, conflict. So it's really useful. And obviously, also, it's not just language, it's culture that's tied to the language as well. So how people say things has different cultural backgrounds too. So you need to take that into account as well. So another thing people seem to assume is, well, yeah, it's safe. A place to work on, let's say, Drupal.org is a safe place. Yeah, no harm can come to you. Well, it's not just making somewhere safe to work, to exist, etc. You need to also make sure it feels safe. And sometimes that's much more difficult than it is to make it so it is safe. You actually need to go over and above to help people feel that they're working in a safe environment. And it takes a lot of communication, and it takes a lot of really well-trodden procedures and training to make sure that you've got something that people think, yeah, I'm okay here. And it's worth it because you get more interesting people to come along when you do this. So we spend a lot of time, we both get trained in, and then spend a lot of time writing probable scenarios or possible scenarios, and then work those through theoretically, so that when something or if something happens in the Drupal community, we can always pick it off a shelf and go, this is what we do in this situation. So that type of thing goes on a lot. Anybody who's worked in a voluntary capacity, yeah, a job well done is thanks enough. Well, yeah, whatever. It's always worth saying thank you to someone. And not only saying thank you, but saying it in a public manner. And no matter what the type of contribution is, be it writing code, or be it running meetings, or be it organizing events, or be it resolving issues, it is worth saying thank you publicly and recognizing the commitment that people have made. I mean, we've made a big effort in the last couple of years in Drupal to not just recognize and give contribution credit for code contribution, but for all of these other things. So if you look in our issue queues, a bit like GitHub, then you'll find not just code contribution and then recognition there, but you'll find things like speakers at events, volunteers at events, even people who've submitted questions to our trivia quiz will get a issue credit for doing that because it matters. Yeah. And it's a public way of saying, yeah, brilliant, thank you. But yeah, for all the ways that contribute. See, that's the thing. This is when I can't see the slides. But don't forget that saying thanks doesn't pay the mortgage, doesn't pay the rent. So also look at how you can connect the people that are putting in the large amounts of contribution to a way to raise basically cold hard cash from it because they deserve it. Yeah. So we found Open Collective really useful for this, and we're doing more and more with them over the years, and quite a lot of camps and stuff do this as well. But yeah, making sure that people can do that is really important. All developers don't die. And by this, I mean that once somebody is there, they'll always be there contributing. And you know what? It's not true. Yeah. You know, all developers don't die. Oh, yes, they do. And I'm sure JP Stacey would hate me for calling him old, but he is not around anymore. Quite shockingly so, as a surprise. And God, I miss him. But it's, you have to assume that people have, the members of your community have a community life cycle. Yeah, people come into the community, they grow within the community, and it's completely okay when they move on to other things because we all have to keep trying other things all the time. And quite often they will go to something and then they will do something else for a while and then they will come back. And when they come back, they will bring back with them new ideas, new ways of working that help your community. So absolutely, make it possible always for people to move on. You should never be in a situation where you've got community members that feel that they are stuck there because they have some sort of duty. Your community members that are contributing to your project should be contributing because it's enjoyable. So if you're a leader of a working group or anything in a leadership capacity, the first job of a leader in your community is to start thinking about your successor. Okay, so when we look here, these are people when we've got our core contribution mentors that we have a DrupalCon every year, a job that I was leading for a couple of years and people before me were leading. So one of the first things I did was start looking at, oh, who's going to better do this one? I need to move on. And so we've got, where is she? Can't see her there. Sorry, I can't see in the picture. You know, there's people that have moved on to that job. So Ella at the back, she's kind of doing that now. And, you know, I'm hoping that she's taking on the same thing and start bringing up new people to move into that position. There's another one around making assumptions around the ease of participation. We're all able to participate. It just takes some effort. and we make it, we especially within open source, we have in the past kind of assumed that it's just a case of sitting down and learning. Anyone can do it. Well, it's not true. The cold hard reality of life is that it is harder for some groups of people to have that free time it takes to contribute to open source, to grow within open source communities. It's harder because they have less free time, because they're doing things like looking after family, in this case doing the laundry, etc. You can't just assume that everybody has the same level of ability of access, because they don't. And it's something you need to work at to make sure that you do work on making sure that your project does think about how you're going to get people included in your project that don't have as much time. Because when you bring a wider variety of people into your project, the things that you unlock make your project better. You'll have a better project if you've got a wider variety of people making the project, because the world is diverse. Whether your project's diverse or not, the world is diverse. And getting people in there that understand that is going to make it so you can better reflect the people you're trying to sell your projects to. We do a lot of stuff in Drupal to help different groups by giving them extra time and opportunities. I know the Drupal Diversity and Inclusion working group, however you want to describe them, run these fantastic speaker diversity workshops where they're actually helping people learn better how to do talks, and especially how to write better pitches for talks so that they get chosen in the first place. And also making sure that our events organizers make it easier for people to get chosen if they're representing an underrepresented group. I kind of touched on this before about if you use open source software, people sometimes seem to think that it comes with some sort of duty to contribute. Now, it's never a duty to contribute to open source. There are too many good reasons why it's in your interests to contribute to the open source project that you use to ever need to worry about a sense of duty. If we can make sure that people realize that it helps them become more closely linked with that project, it helps people know they're the ones to go to first when somebody wants to use that project as an end user, etc., etc. So many different things to learn by getting involved, that to place a duty upon people is never the way to go about it. And yeah, volunteers can be told what to do. No, it's never a matter of telling someone, I need you to go do this, and I need you to do it by such and such a date. They're a volunteer. You can't use that method. You have to make it easier for them to choose the way you would love them to work or do the different thing. You get things out of the way. So the easiest way for them to work is the way you want them to work. So you can nudge them in the right direction. You can guide them, you can nudge them. What's in it for them? So that they do what you need. There's a story called The Carpenter and the Gardener, and that's what kind of on this kind of level. It's worth reading about. If you Google for that, you should be able to find it. And finally, just because Drupal or anything else has been around for a long time. I mean, Drupal is coming up to 20 years old, which is one of the oldest open source projects out there. It does not mean that we know it all or anybody else does, any of the big long-term projects. Great ideas come from anywhere. The first time I gave this talk was at a conference called Heart of Closure for a thing called Closure Language. And I was coming along to the project, and they did this thing before the event, and it was amazing. And we'd never seen it before. Nobody at the Drupal Association had seen what they were doing, this kind of icebreaker thing before the event started. So we learn new things all the time from inside and outside the project, and we'll continue doing that. And it's something that we're hoping to introduce into DrupalCons in the future, which kind of would be kind of fun. You know, so that was it. I know that, I mean, for example, I'm still learning. I would say that I'm just at the very beginning of knowing how to work with volunteer communities. And I noticed you'll notice that I didn't say managing communities, because I hate that. I hate that word, because it makes it sound as though you're kind of controlling it, and I'm not. I'm working with it, which is why when I started the Drupal Association, it was originally advertised as community manager, and I refused to work with that job title. I said, no, it can't say manager. You have to say, and we spent ages trying to work out what, and we ended up on liaison, because it's never about managing. So yeah, that's why that's as it is. There's always other lessons, maybe another time, or maybe I could go into some of these in more detail, maybe. But in the meantime, do we have time for any questions? Can I make that work? Ooh, how do I make that go away so I can get back to the meeting? Does that take me back to the meeting? I can tell I'm on new hardware here. Yes, I hope that came through okay.
Yes, great. Thank you, Rachel. That was really great and really interesting to hear your learnings from the Drupal community, for sure.
Is there any questions from anyone?
Anyone have any questions they would like to ask Rachel?
Yeah, Rachel, are you in King's Lynn at the moment? Because the weather looks gorgeous.
I am actually, yeah, it's lovely.
Wow.
It's quite surprising, actually.
We have slight sky in Ipswich.
We do get some of the best weather in the country here, to be fair. So it's got the lowest rainfall and all that type of stuff of the UK.
I had a question, Rachel. The point you made about people needing to pay their mortgage, you know, particularly in open, I think that's a really topic question. How has the community responded to attempts to allow that to happen? I know when I was in the Joomla community, there were quite a lot of people who were very strongly against any kind of commercial involvement in the open source project, and very strongly against any kind of you pay me money to fix this bug type of thing. So I just wonder how you've approached that in the Drupal community, and how that kind of helps people practically.
I think that we have a community with very similar, or people with very similar outlooks on what open source is as in the Joomla community. So we don't have many people saying, hey, I want to be able to charge for X, Y, and Z. That's not really something that anyone is bringing up. However, people are saying that we should be able to have right in Drupal.org next to each project that people manage and maintain, the ability for people to donate money to that project. And then that project can say, hey, we will use this to support the maintainers that are actually helping. And there is a project taking place to integrate, it's slowly taking place, to integrate Drupal.org project management pages with the project pages with, I'm kind of hoping it'll be, I'm kind of hoping it will be platform agnostic, but I think it will probably end up being, at least to start with, just Open Collective. So you'll be able to see an Open Collective link directly on the project page for each maintained project. And there's a few people in the community helping work that up, and we're supporting them with that. So actually, it's these people in the community that are creating both the code that will go onto Drupal.org and the policies around how that will work.
Yeah, sorry, Ruth, just to follow up on that same question, in regards to, do you have, whether this is something that's within your role, do you initiate connections with, say, for example, agencies that utilize, the bad word, utilize, that acquire Drupal developers as part of that, you know, helping the community members have a mortgage, well, you know, pay the rent and whatnot?
Yeah, so
is that what kind, how does that structure work, if you had that structure, or do you have that structure?
So we do have that structure to a degree now, and it's something we are actually looking to build upon at the moment. So if you went to drupal.org/services, it would take you to a list of the organizations that are involved in Drupal. And what you'll find there is, next to each organization, it will say, of the people attached to this organization, how many issues they've worked on, whether they sponsor the Drupal Association, and so on. And then what we do is we literally order that table by how much they commit to the project. Yeah. So you'll find the organizations near the top of that list have people who are working on Drupal.org issues of one type or another full time, because it's the only way they can work through that many issues. We'd like to make it quite explicit, and one of the things that we've got at the moment is a thing called the Contribution Recognition Committee, who are working on a new version of this right now. And, you know, there's ideas floating around about, you know, maybe you could declare, you know, you have this many full-time staff working on Drupal contribution, and have that kind of put on there. What that does is it doesn't mean that the Drupal project is necessarily paying for someone directly to work on Drupal code or whatever contribution, but it means is we're creating an environment where it's in the interests of an organization, like an agency, to dedicate people's time to work on it, because it means that client will see them first. Yeah. So by making it so clients are more visible, or agencies are more visible, if they are giving staff the time and paying their mortgage to work on things, then we talk about them more. So that an end user client, let's say Oxford University or something, when they think, oh, I need someone to work on my Drupal website next year, then they're going to, the Drupal organizations that they're going to come across are the ones that are committing the most. So it happens to an extent now, and we want to promote that even more, to help make it easier for organizations to think, hey, you know what, we need to pay people to work on Drupal issues, because we need the product to be great so we can use it, and also because it helps us get seen. Is that kind of answer in a roundabout way?
No, that certainly does. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose that's easy for us because we've got a lot of organizations. It depends how many you've got to how easy that is to do.
Yeah, no, in our architecture, I guess our community architecture is that we have partners ourselves.
Yeah.
Which are how we see highly skilled and third-party service providers. But there's also just normal third-party service providers, which we need to think they still offer the opportunity for these open source developers to earn a living and keep within the community. It's just how to advertise the hierarchy to an extent, as it were. But that's something that's nice to see.
It's a difficult one because the Drupal Association needs money to do the work that we do. Yeah. So we've got a thing called supporting partners, which is like a sponsorship deal, if you like, which helps pay for that. So that moves people up the list, but also just simply working on Drupal.org issues where no money changes hands, moves people up the list as well. And there's a balancing act and an algorithm. God, they always work out well. So to work out how that where people balance out. Playing with that algorithm allows you to change how people choose to get involved.
Don't mind if I ask another question?
No.
So in regards to the making people feel safer, I think that's always something that we're trying to do. What things have the association implemented more recently to help with that? What I'm trying to identify is that we have an issue of that. Yes, we've made the environment as safe as possible by obviously having a code of conduct and whatnot, but how do you demonstrate that safety net? Obviously through transparency of how you deal with public incidents, for example, but how could you is it that's the only way? Or, say for example, you do have private instances internally that you can't really obviously disclose, but you do want to emphasize we're able to put things in place to ensure safety and whatnot. Which, luckily we don't have that many instances, but that doesn't mean that people feel safer just because they can't see.
No, and I think you're right. I think that there is to an extent a case of being seen to do the right thing is probably the biggest thing you can do. No, it's not. Being seen to do the right thing is important. The biggest thing you can do is find the person who is ultimately absolutely at the top of the pile in terms of leadership. Whoever is right at the top, they have to publicly commit to the safety and security, and they have to keep doing it. So they have to keep saying things like code of conduct is important, this is what we're doing. They have to live the rules, but if they don't do it, why should anybody else? As long as nobody whatsoever in the project is seen as above the law, that's the biggest thing you can do. That's hard. It's hard to make sure that's right. I mean, we're kind of lucky, but a lot of other projects are not so lucky at getting that kind of commitment from the very, very top levels. So yeah, I mean, so for example, Dries Buiten, you know, right at the top of our thing, I would say that he's always been committed to it. I would say that he has not always felt comfortable talking about it. Yeah. So, and I think he would be fair with me. I think he'd be happy with me to say that. He's got much better at feeling comfortable talking about that stuff. Yeah. That helped. I mean, like, massively. So yeah, working on that type of thing helped. You know, that really makes a difference. In terms of what other things we do, we actually go out and get, so for example, I went out, and all of the people at the Drupal Association who were involved in code of conduct went out and got proper formal training in code of conduct management. There's a person called Sage Sharp, and they run a code of conduct training course, and it's really quite good. I'm not saying that they're the only person that does this, but they do a pretty good job of it. But by doing that, you're showing a commitment that everyone's getting an actual training, rather than just going, hey, I'm just in charge of this. Well, hey, what goes on here? There is a thing that we're doing now where, as members of the community, also take up this code of conduct training. We're marking their profiles on Drupal.org as having taken this training. And then, when we have an events listing, so we're building a new events listing at the moment for events all around the world, there will be code of conduct contact fields on that event, and we'll show on there that the code of conduct contacts are trained, formally trained. So through all of those different levels, what you're saying is, this is something that we take seriously as a community. We also make sure that we involve the community in creating the codes of conduct that we have, which helps as well. Because that way it's much easier to feel safe or feel that a code of conduct applies to you when it's something that you own, when you have to own something, because you've been involved in the creation and management and you know, the fact that it exists. When you've got that and you've got ownership, you're more likely to see it as valid. I'm trying to think of anything else we do. Deal with issues quickly. And I've got to say, actually, virtual events, so much, it came as a revelation of me at DrupalCon Global, is if you have an issue, and they can be minor issues, you know, we had a couple of minor things that were not, you know, so just one of those things. And virtual events, you can deal with them really quickly. Like something that an in-person event can take hours or days to sort, because you've literally got to go around to people. At virtual events, you can have it solved from opening of a case through to closure in minutes, and I love it. It's made my life easy. Because you can get a hold of people. Yeah, you can show them exactly what it is that is an issue, and in the context, you can talk to them, you can talk to all the parties involved, and you can do it all really quickly. And then deal with it. So whatever decision you come to, whether it's stopping somebody being in an event or whatever it is, you press a button and it's done. Yeah, I love it. Should have more virtual events.
Rachel, do you have any kind of formal onboarding process for when people become involved in Drupal? Let's just say I register and I join the forums. is there anything that you do to encourage people along the way?
No, we don't, and it's something we need to change. And I would be very, very happy to hear what other people do, because it's something that we need to sort completely. We're rubbish at that.
That's a shame, because I was hoping I could learn.
Yeah, it's a massive hole in what we do, actually. I will completely take that one on the chin. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because I'm thinking of a similar sort of thing with Alfresco. It's a very complex piece of software, and we just need to encourage more people to become involved. And we don't really have a formal onboarding process. And I was thinking of perhaps nurture emails when you first register. You obviously get the welcome to our community email, and there's some footer links to new resources, etc. But I was thinking perhaps after your first post or something like that, or after a month of activity, we send you a second email with, you know, some more learning materials or something. This is just something I've been thinking about the last couple of days, is whether, because we're a commercial company, so if we have nurture tracks for sales, and I think we should be thinking similarly for community members.
Yeah,
I think that's fantastic. I think that, yes, it needs doing. Obviously, the content needs creating. The other thing to bear in mind is you need their opt-in to do that. There needs to be an explicit opt-in. GDPR. So there are many, I don't want to say ways around that, because that's exactly the opposite of what I want to say. I'm not. I love the GDPR. I think it's something very close to my heart. But there are ways to make sure that you can keep having those conversations with people over time that aren't necessarily just sending an email on a regular basis.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there, Eddie, if that's okay. We're doing something very similar as well. It's that big black hole. You just assume you build something and people will come, and you kind of leave it there. We're doing something very similar with our project, which is Suite CRM, which is very much a CRM and kind of sales-led software. And currently, at the moment, we're doing an exercise where we are convincing, similar to similar to point 9, volunteers can be told what to do, that we're trying to convince the community team to see the benefit of nurturing new members. So like, for example, we're using Discourse for our forums. I've created reports that could see all the new members who have joined within a certain amount of time, and if they've made their first post or those kind of things. And I encourage the community team to say, keep an eye on these things so that when they first post, you're the first one to welcome them, and just keep an eye on them. If they post more, maybe a threshold of 3 or 4, then maybe send them a nice message saying, oh, that's really great. You know, is there anything I can help with? It's again, you can't really say, oh, it's a salesy kind of approach. It is kind of, you get that. And you're just there to convince the community team if they want to do it. And it's very optional, because obviously all you're doing is just convincing them the benefits of onboarding more members. One of the better things of what we're trying to do is that their moderator teams, you know, the aspect that they become, these members that you nurture become more active, therefore more ideas are pushed into the project, more a load off their workload, you know, because obviously more community members are getting involved with, you know, things and staying and sticking, as it were. So we're going through that whole exercise as well, where we're trying to stay away from the emails, because emails are just they just go into inboxes. And it depends on the tools that you use. In our case, Discourse seems to be a very nice platform at the moment that answers to some of our needs, where it has a disco bot, which is automated, and which sends multiple emails, not emails, sorry, PMs.
Yeah, messages type, yeah.
Yeah. And similarly, Discourse also has that summary email, which is a newsletter, which they can opt in, obviously, but it just sends kind of a pulse of the activity of the community to them, and just kind of keeps that activity going. But I completely feel that we're going through the same exercise ourselves. It really just started from identifying the high value conversions. Again, this is all sales talky, but it's sometimes nice to convey that, especially to your managers, if they don't understand the terminology used within communities.
Some good points there, actually. Got me thinking.
We're also going through this process as well, I think. Actually, so we're partly there.
Well, hey, we've got a working group.
We have an onboarding process for every team. We have an onboarding bot in Slack that automatically sends them stuff about what the community is, stuff about diversity, code of conduct, where they can go to find out what's happening in the teams. And we also have an onboarding bot on Discourse, but they're all like their own separate platform. We're now looking at how can we do this better, so that when someone downloads Mautic, they can say, I want to know about getting involved in the community. I want to know about how to use the product. I want to know about being a developer. And we should use our own dog food and use Mautic to do this. So we're planning to use Mautic to do this. And then send them the relevant information on a drip campaign through email. But yeah, that's the channel we have. But I think also what I use Savannah, which I've just put a link to, it's the second link, sorry, the first one was wrong, which is a community CRM. So I pull in all of the channels that our community use into a dashboard, and I use tags to flag up things that I'm interested in. But it tells me when there's a new community contributor. It tells me when someone's going inactive. It tells me when someone's going become active, like they join the community, but they've just made their first contribution. And so that, like, it's hard when you've got a huge community to do that at scale, but I really try to get our team members particularly to reach out to those people and say, oh, thanks, that's great. You know, or when there's a new person who's just made a PR, make sure that somebody follows up with them. So, yeah.
Oh, and especially if that's a human, and especially if it's a famous human, then, well, I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest, people do look at communities and say, oh, this person's like some sort of
Rock star.
famous. Yeah, I that's exactly the word I was trying to avoid, but it's true. Yeah, I mean, they hold in high regard if that type of person says, hey, brilliant, yeah, well done. Nothing more than that. The encouragement that gives to a new person is huge.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that Ruth's community CRM is also something that I use as well. So I highly recommend that as well.
It's really powerful. It is in beta, so there's a few things that are still being worked on, but really powerful. Yeah.
Rachel, could I ask kind of like, it's not a political question really, but what's the relationship between the association and Acquia?
Sorry.
There isn't one.
Oh, right, okay.
It literally is the association.
Yeah.
Has Acquia is owned, was set up by Dries, who also set up the Drupal project in the first place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Acquia was created as a service provider, and it's quite a big service provider. It's the biggest in the, using the project. So because many of the core maintainers and Dries himself are employees or directors of Acquia, of course it's seen in a position of very, very close to the center of the project. Yeah, but it hasn't got, Acquia doesn't have any, I don't know, steering of the project other than many of its core maintainers and project managers are Acquia employees. And the Drupal Association doesn't steer the technical direction of the project at all. And none of the core maintainers are associated with the Drupal Association. So we can't say do this, do that, because we've got no say. We're a service the project users, for want of a better description. Of course, there's also the fact that Dries is a board member of both. So he's a board member of the Drupal Association and a board member of Acquia. Yeah. However, I think he's on a couple of other boards as well. So, you know, that's life. I mean, he wouldn't be the first board member around the world to be on more than one board. He's pretty good at actually wearing multiple hats and swapping them as necessary, to be honest. And, you know, we've been in situations where he says, if I was speaking as a Acquia employee, I might see this, but I'm not in this situation, you know? So there's no formal relationship, basically. They are
manage that in the issue queue, for example, if there's issues that any company are trying to get merged, is there a way that do you fall back on governance in that way, or?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of people using their position on the Drupal Association board to benefit their company they work for, you mean? Yeah, there are specific rules that all association 503c boards have around declaring interests, etc., etc. Yeah. And actually it's US law that determines that, so we don't need to get too worry about it, really. Of course, there is a lot of conspiracy theory, maybe, I suppose, that would say that that's not the case. That conspiracy theory will always be there. Yeah, the grassy knoll is always there.
Yeah, there's always a second shooter, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to be the case. And almost it comes to a point where there's no point in trying to argue the case every time, because it's like, if that's what you believe, fine.
Yeah. And I guess the only way you can deal with that is transparency, isn't it? Is like making sure that it's clear when decisions are made, how they're made, what messages you have in you know, what messages you have
and I mean,
isn't exploited. Exactly.
We have a board that meets fairly regular basis. We don't publish the minutes until the next meeting, because at the next meeting they will approve the board meeting minutes of the previous meeting. So we can take quite a long while for meeting minutes to come out, especially recently, because they've not been having sort of official meetings as such, because they've been busy trying to make sure we've got enough money to survive because of COVID craziness and events cancelled, etc., etc. They've been working meetings, not sort of strategic board meetings. So meeting minutes were shorter than maybe they could be. But yeah, I mean, we have pretty established procedures that every other 503c non-profit in the US has to have. Yeah. Board members have to sign an agreement. I know they have to sign it when they start, but I have a feeling they also have to sign it every year, just as a reminder. But don't quote me on that, even though this is a recorded conversation. But I was thinking, I know they have to sign it at least at the start, but I think they're reminded of it every year. And the board member agreement explains exactly what they can't do in that respect. It kind of says, you literally can't use your position on the board to purely for the benefit of your company at home. That type of stuff. And none of that is unusual. Every 503c has similar kind of thing.
Yeah, we're in an interesting situation in Malta because we don't have an association or an entity, so we don't have that ability to have the separation. So yeah, the only option we have is complete transparency, really, which is challenging, but it's needed. Do you have a board type thing in Alfresco, Eddie?
No, again, I think we're in a similar situation as you are in Mautic, is that there is no separate Magento association, if you like. Sorry, Alfresco association. So, for example, I'm appointed by the company, for example, and the community runs certain events like DevCon. The community chooses the speakers, helps set the agenda, but it's Alfresco that pays for the venue, etc. So it's just, I think it's slightly different than Drupal Association, where you're essentially a self-funded organization, whereas with Alfresco, it's certainly funded by the company.
Yeah.
Although this is one of our discussion points at the moment.
I don't think there is a right answer as to how to set up. Lots of different people do it in different ways, and what's perfect, I don't know. Existing as we do could mean that you're constantly looking for the finance that you need, because it's not. We can't just turn around to some sort of parent organization and say, hey, we need £1 million, because there is no parent organization, which is on occasions quite scary. However, that we can really concentrate on our mission and not have to worry about satisfying a parent organization, yeah, we can. Does it mean that we're not at the whim of a large investor? So, for example, Automatic, for that kind of at the heart of WordPress, they have some of these what they call them in the States. They get like big investment sort of companies, like third level investment. I can't get the words in my head today. And of course, they've got these investments, these kind of people putting money into it, who kind of want things out of that money. Because they only do it because they want to make money. Yeah, whereas everyone who's giving Drupal Association money in terms of things like supporting partners are doing it because they know that the success of Drupal and the success of the project is a success for them. Yeah, they don't need to. They're never in a position where they're trying to extract a profit, which is just as well, because we don't make a profit. But in that respect, we don't have people leaning over us and saying, you must do this.
Yeah.
Which is, kind of handy.
Great. Was there anything else you wanted to ask, Eddie?
No, I was just about to say I've got to drop now.
Okay.
But Rachel, this has been wonderful. Really, really interesting and very, very useful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Rachel, especially after you've just had all
I had my proper laptop. It would have been
your hospitalization and everything. It's like, really appreciate it. We have got some sessions coming up in the next 3 months. So have the events.
Yeah, they sound
There's
good.
some really good talks coming up, and I've got a couple more that I'm lining up. Just waiting for the session title from the speakers. So we're booked through till February now. So
Wow,
that's great. Well done.
That's really cool. Okay.
But yeah, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for joining us.
No worries.
Hope
Thank
you
you very much. I've enjoyed it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay, bye. See you.